All right, welcome everybody to the Coaches Kickstart Club call. This is, I don't even know, many, many years in the making. I started the Kickstart Club calls months and months ago, or years and years ago, and then met Karen. She ended up joining in on the fun as well. And so we are happy to be here. We have a great topic for us. And the nice thing is I know that a lot of people will catch these by replay. And normally we have more than 6 of us here, but this will be a nice intimate discussion about what it is that we're going to be talking about. Right, Kara?
Yes, Jennifer.
Yes. So the other thing that we wanted to do is to let you guys know, if you don't know and you happen to be near New Jersey or wanting to come to New Jersey, we are doing our Coach-a-Palooza, which is going to be on November 9th. It's going to happen in Morristown, New Jersey. And Karen and I are very excited, right, Carrie? Very excited, Karen, very. Because we're going to really be spending a day to take coaching skills to the next level. We have a lot of fun games, activities, insights. We have ways to be able to provide feedback on coaching to you. You guys will get to hear us coach. So if you're interested in checking that out, go to kickstartyouredge.com/Jersey 2019. Right, Kara?
Yes, Jen.
All right. Why don't you kick off this topic for us?
So, what did you say?
I'm hot.
Oh, I'm like, where are you going? So it's funny. Jen and I were having a discussion many moons ago about this concept of, your strengths and your weaknesses, and your strengths can be your weaknesses. And we came up with the concept of your biggest asset is also your biggest ass ache. So the things that work really, really well for you are also the things that are going to turn around and they're going to kind of bite you in the ass. And I'm going to tell, Jen, I'm going to do my Navy SEAL story. So part of that, it's about knowing, when to let go of something, knowing when sometimes seems counterproductive for you. And there's this, this is true. It's not like a story that I'm making up. There's this part of Navy SEAL training that's actually called drown proofing. So they tie your hands behind your back and they tie your feet together and they dump you into a 9-foot deep pool. And the objective is to survive. And it's to survive for 5 minutes. And like most SEAL training, a boatload of people who attempt to do this drown proofing thing fail. They panic, they scream, they got lifted back out, they struggle, they lose consciousness, all these kind of things. But the people that make it because they understand 2 counterintuitive lessons. And that's what I mean by the ass ache and the asset. The first lesson of drown proofing, it's a paradox. The more you struggle to keep your head above water, the more likely you're going to sink. So if you think about it, with your arms and legs tied together, it's essentially impossible to maintain yourself at the surface for the full 5 minutes. So when you work harder and harder and harder to keep your body floating, it's only going to cause you to sink faster. And this is the mind twist with this. The trick to drown proofing is actually to let yourself sink to the bottom of the pool. And from there, you push off the bottom of the pool floor, you let your momentum carry you back up to the surface, you grab a quick breath of air, and then you start the whole process again. So the part of this that I want you to understand is surviving this drown proofing, not that you need to try this at home, requires no superhuman strength or endurance. It doesn't even require that you know how to swim. It requires the ability actually to not swim. So instead of resisting the physics that would actually kill you, you got to surrender to them to basically save your own ass and your life. The next lesson of this concept, again, a little bit obvious, but another paradox. The more you panic, the more oxygen you're going to burn, and the more likely you're going to be unconscious. So it's interesting because this exercise turns your kind of turns you into a survival mode. But the thing is that the more intense you go into that survival mode and try to breathe, the less likely you're going to breathe. So the more intense you want to live, the way you would think that you would normally do it, the greater chance that you're not. And what this is it's how do you actually control what's going on? How do you control your own impulses? How can you actually be in this and have the ability to let go of something when you want it the most? So it's you normally think that it's the relationship between effort and reward, but in this case, it's not true. And what we're talking about with this, the concept of your greatest asset being your greatest asset, your greatest asset being your greatest asset, if you think about it, the more you try to control things, let's think about your feelings, right? Let's think about your impulses. What happens is the more powerless you feel. If you think about your emotional life is uncontrollable, and then you try to control it, and it actually makes it worse. So this, Jen, it actually made me think of another thing. Like the more you try, like freedom was a thing, and that popped up for me. The more you try to get freedom, ironically, it's going to limit the amount of freedom that you can get because you're going to be chasing it. So by choosing and committing to certain things, that's how we actually get freedom. So think about even happiness. When you try to be happy, you chase it, and it probably makes you less happy. The letting go piece of it is actually accepting unhappiness, gets you to a place of acceptance, and actually makes you happy. So there's a little mind twist to kind of kick things off and start things going.
All right, so Kara, there's a couple of things that are running through my mind as you share this, right? So one is what you're talking about is fighting for something versus allowing something.
Good point. Yep.
Thank you. And and so so that's one thing. The other thing when I think of the asset and asset though is also how our strengths become our weaknesses. Totally. Right? So I sort of feel like we have two parallel concepts going on here. Right? So with and I just want to make sure I'm tracking. So with the Navy SEALs, right, it's their asset is they're strong, they can fight, they can tough through things, they can they know how to survive by doing.
Yeah.
But in the horrible Salem witch trials that Sarah has now equated this whole thing to, that whole process, which is, by the way, why I'm not a Navy SEAL. It's this particular exercise that would have me choose not to do that. But I digress. So, so then the asset of being able to survive by doing would become an asset in this because the struggle of trying to fight it would actually cause the reverse effect.
Bingo.
Okay.
So like we were talking the other day about when we were talking about you and me, and one of my strengths is the ability to get things done. I will answer things quickly. I will make things happen really fast, which is a really, really great asset. However, the ass ache of that is I miss details. I will, if an email is too long, although I'm going to get it really quick and start to answer it, I won't answer all the questions because it got too long. So because I'm not paying attention to the details. And what was the example, Jen, that I was talking about with you? something about the creativity or, yeah, I can't think of what it is right now.
But we all have it, right? So there's a couple of ways that this shows up in coaching. So let's sort of bring this home, right? So one of the things is if something is our asset, something that works for us, something that comes naturally, we tend to expect it to come naturally for other people as well, right? So if my asset is clear communication, detailed communication, I then expect other people to be able to provide the same thing to me because it's so easy and natural for me. So what can happen is we start to judge people based on something that's our strength if it's not somebody else's strength. So that judgment can come into play. You know, Karen and I see this all the time when we're working in corporations and working with leaders, is that their asset, what they're strong at, they expect other people to be, and then they're frustrated with their employees or their teammates, and then how to be able to let go of that. Right? And so that's one area that it comes in. Also, an overdone strength, as Karen had mentioned, you know, with the quick response, also can become a liability if it's not managed. And, you know, Karen and I have learned this through our EQI 2.0 assessment tool that's part of our Get Real Leadership and Corporate Coach training program. Is when we get certified in that, there are times that our emotional intelligence, like if it is just off the charts, can actually be a hindrance in dealing with other people. So an example would be empathy. If you are off the charts when it comes to empathy towards other people, how does that sometimes get in the way? Does it actually create codependency? Does it actually create letting people off the hook for things? Does it actually prevent things from happening because you're so with them and their story and what's going on that from a leadership perspective, you're missing business goals? So those are some different ways, Kara, that I wanted to bring some tangible parts into this because it shows up constantly with our clients as well as ourselves.
Yeah, and I think, Jen, too, when you think about it, I mean, and I love that you brought in the, you know, the EQI 2.0, because there's so, I mean, it's backed in science, and it's a phenomenal tool. But if you think about the different things, like, you know, it's one of the components is about assertiveness, right? So your ability to put your needs, your thoughts, your opinions out into the world, and what happens with that, it might, you know, it also might involve some kind of, you know, opposition or conflict, but it's about taking a stand. But the thing there is when does that balancing act come in? And maybe that's, if you think about that, that's with all of these things. How does the balancing act come in? Because you can overdo the assertiveness, and then, you know, people are going to think that you're just steamrolling over them. So I love the whole thing about the EQI piece, because every single, you know, all the things that you're really good at and that really work for you can also be the things that kind of get you jacked up. You know, if you think about it, your desire for results, again, and I don't mean you, can have you steamrolling over other people. It's like, boom, you have a, you know, you get a thing in your head, you're going and running, and you've got, you know, your eye on the prize. And what about the bodies that you're steamrolling over and the casualties? You know, and if you think about it, even if your strength is being direct and being able to have conversations, and overuse part of that can actually be something with, so, you know, people might not think you're really sensitive.
Love it. Good. So let's throw it out to the group here for some discussion then. So we're going to pull you guys in to the conversation. And what ways have you seen the concept of your asset becomes your biggest asset becomes your biggest asset with some of your clients? Right? So maybe some situations that you've coached them around, maybe teams that you've worked with. Where have you seen this concept really come into play? And maybe even how did you handle it? Who wants to share first? It's funny, no one's on camera today except for Team Kickstart Your Edge.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Oh, good. There we go. We got people now. Look at this. Fantastic. All right. Who's going to share? Go ahead, Sarah. Go unmute yourself.
Hello. I wasn't waving to share. It was just to say hello. But hi, everyone. I've got an example from a client I've been coaching recently. So it's, as you know, I've been coaching in a hedge fund. One of the clients there has, he is Mr. Detail, Mr. Cautious. Every piece of code that he writes, he wants to check 3 times. He cares too much, objectively. And as a result, he's got a colleague who is basically the co-head, so they're both co-heads of the department, who is the polar opposite. This guy kind of codes whilst having a chat, delivers things without checking, and you can imagine the friction between them. They're both driving each other mad. One sees the other one as being super uptight and not getting things done and really nitpicking. The other one sees the other guy as being basically lacking diligence. He's sloppy, he's careless. So how I've been coaching that is firstly to raise self-awareness about their own behaviours and how they might be perceived by other people, because obviously we all think that our way is normal and right. And secondly, what I've been doing is trying to help them to, look at the other person's way of operating with a kinder perspective rather than being critical. And what I've been doing on top of all of that as an overlay is basically working with them to go away after the session to change their way of working with that other person and acknowledging and validating that the other person has strengths, i.e. the sloppiness or the nitpicking, as well as the weaknesses that come with that. So it's been quite interesting because I've been working with their boss, who overheads the whole thing, and then these 2 co-heads, and seeing the complete triangle about how it impacts everyone. So it's pretty interesting work.
Sarah, I absolutely love that, because what it comes down to is the meaning that people are attaching to other people's behaviors. So it's the interpretation, the issue, right? About, well, if you are doing other things while coding, you're going to miss details or it's not effective. Or if you're over anal about everything, what does that really mean? And so that, are you coaching them individually or as individually? Because it would be interesting. I'm just thinking out loud here. If I was coaching both of them together, which is not what you're doing, but if it was together, part of it would be then to say, if you were to look from the other person's perspective, what actually works about the way they approach it? And so it's not even about switching somebody all the way over to the other side. We're not going to make Mr. Diligent now be loosey-goosey. That's an actual term, loosey-goosey around what they're doing, or vice versa. However, it is about where do we find shades of gray and what's going on with that. So that's great. Fantastic. Who else has an example they could share from coaching of biggest asset is also the biggest ass ache? Anything else coming to mind?
Hi.
Hey, Lisa.
Hi. Okay, this is my first time being on the call with you guys. I'm super excited.
Oh, good. Welcome, welcome.
Thank you. I'm working with I do a lot of health and wellness coaching.
Okay.
And I'm currently working with a doctor who has gotten himself, he's in his mid-40s, and he's super driven and super heady, and has gotten himself to where he is in his career because of those assets. Mm-hmm. And that has really served him well in his career. But so the flip of that is that he has a risk of doing analysis paralysis with regards to taking a lot of what he's done in his career and his professional life and turn it into his own physical health. right?
Yeah.
So he reads a lot of books and he listens to a lot of podcasts and he's gathering as much information as he can. And there's part of me that's like, let's just throw that all out the window and let's go for a walk, right? So he is really in this place of wanting it all to be really perfect so that he feels as confident as he can before he takes this really big, giant leap, which is looking at his own physical health. So,
right.
Yeah.
No, that's huge, right? So his desire to be productive and to learn and to grow and to really be a subject matter expert and really do the diligence, right, is also preventing him from perhaps being more well-rounded and having areas of focus and then also affecting his health in the long run, which is ironic, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. The great thing is that he knows this about himself. You know, he came to me from this place of like, I've read over 200 books about how to manage a team and how to be the best that I can be in my career. And now I'm really ready to implement this in my own physical self. So that's a great thing also. He knows that this is an asset that has gotten him where he needs to get to. And now he needs to pull in some other, like loosen the reins a little bit in that area and go in another direction. Yeah.
That's good. Good. All right. So Erica Marks, you wrote an
I just wanted to tell you a funny story of one time when it worked out.
Good.
So my husband went to a therapist and they told him, and she said your perfectionism is, not you got to work on that or whatever, here, read this book about perfectionism and because it's getting in your way. Right. And so then he did 3 hours of work on finding the very perfect book for unlearning perfectionism. And then he found, as you would expect, right? And then he found this Brene Brown book. And so sometimes, and then that led him to exactly the right intervention on himself.
I love it. Isn't that funny, right? So that's
sometimes it works out. Sometimes you can use it again. That's basically what my wife magic is how can I use that strength? And I think in coaching too, how do you turn that super strength directly at whatever the challenge is?
Yeah.
So you've said it before, and if you're going to be perfect about being imperfect, right? For that type of thing, you're going to be perfectly imperfect. What would you do? So
exactly.
Yeah.
So, and that could even work if you were to be rigid about loosening up. What would that look like? Would that even work? I'm trying to think about ways to be able to do that. That could be interesting, right?
Right. Yeah. No, I do that all the time with clients. Okay, this is who you are. So if you were to be totally uptight about how to loosen up, and they get into it, they can play it out. It's hilarious.
That's actually pretty cool, right? So that would be fun to play around with, even in our own lives. So if there are certain things that we know that it's a strength or our go-to or a comfort zone or an asset, how do we use that to do exactly the opposite? That could be fun.
So what would that be for you, Jen? What's I hear that Karen. What's Jen's super big strength that gets in the way?
So it's kind of funny, Erica, because it's probably one of the same as yours. That and the two of you, right? The two of you are actually very similar here with both of your ability to create shit and to be creative. And it's ooh, how about this idea? And how about this idea? And how about this idea? And how about this idea? Oh, we can do this and we can do this and we can do this. It's whoa. That ability to do that and be able to come up with stuff is amazing. And it's also the ache part of that could be oh my gosh, now we have these 16 things that we can do. We're almost it's the FOMO can kick in.
Right.
Or the overwhelm can kick in, or the people that you're around can be I just checked out because that's just way too much. So
So it's like, what's the most like creative, fun way for you to reduce all of those ideas into just two?
Right.
right.
That's it. Yeah. Because you and I are similar that way, Erica. That's why I love brainstorming with you. Right.
Yes,
So,
and why I'm
yeah.
learning about how to answer that question. Like, what's a real fun way to like, what's a
Yep.
real creative way to, to prioritize, to reduce, to condense? What happens if I put all of those ideas together? Like, what animal does that make? Like I
Right.
need a creative way to reduce.
Love it. So let's do.
Wind you guys, I was going to just say, wind both of you two up together and forget about it.
That's funny.
You say all that, but we are also good at getting stuff done.
We are.
Oh, you totally are. Yeah, big time.
Yeah. But the problem is we add a lot, because Karen's right. Because I'll be like, oh my gosh, we could do this and we can do it in 4 days. And she's like, well, we really have 18 other things to do, and it would really take about 2 months. So that's, where the balance comes in. So here's one for Karen, right? So this is not so much true anymore. Well, I guess it is an asset, and it became an ass ache, and now I feel like it's imbalance. And so when Karen was in the police world, so she's retired police, law enforcement. She was 25 years, and I don't know, she knows the exact numbers of doing that. One of her assets that she needed to put in play fairly early on was really checking emotions at the door. So because of just people and interactions and things that she saw, etc., she had to quickly develop the strength of being able to compartmentalize. And sort of, as she always said, you can probably tell this story better, but that when you put the blue suit on, you would like turn off the emotional components of you. I don't know how to say that. Is that right, Karen?
So the interesting part is that, yeah, the blue suit went on, my emotions went off. However, it's interesting because my empathy for other people was still there, but my shutting down was just like, I could go into any situation and it made me insanely effective as a cop, going into whether it's, horrific car crashes or, domestic violence incidents or things with kids that, you don't want to see, like those kind of things. It was the blue suit was on, you got out of the car, you walked into somebody's house or whatever, and it's just boom. It's just like game on. And then, but that's that. Well, you can finish the rest of what that story is.
Right.
But then it stayed that way.
Right. So then that went over to your personal life as well. Right. Yeah. And so there was a lot of emotionally checked out of different situations, or not being, correct me where I'm wrong here, Kara, but, not being as vulnerable in relationships, not being able to sometimes even be as connected in relationships, I would say. This is all pre-me, because obviously I busted through that and opened her up like the sap she really is, right? But actually that came a little bit before me. But it was really about having to figure out then, how did that strength of being able to compartmentalize, when it turned into an ass ache, was when she realized she wasn't having as deep of connections with other people, or, to be honest, a big range of life experiences. Is that, and not experiences like adventures, but emotional, the range of emotional diversity that we have.
Yeah, and I think that for that, the emotional things was essentially reserved for my immediate family.
Yeah.
Right. So, my parents, my aunts and uncles, my cousins, kids, all that. The emotions were there then, but that was essentially it. Because that was just, it was okay for me to be that way with them, but with other people besides them, not so much.
Right. So, and then what did you do to start to, like, what made you realize you wanted to do it differently, that it was becoming an ass ache?
Well, I think a big part of it was actually realize, well, you first have to have the awareness that it's actually going on, right? You have to know that, you know, something needs to change or something's got to give. And just the personal development kind of journey thing. Like you know, and I kid about this a lot when, you know, when I was in the cop world, you know, if you would say consciousness to me, the only thing that I knew was, well, you were either conscious or you were unconscious. And if you're unconscious, then you need smelling salts. But all that other conscious stuff, I knew nothing about. So it was understanding it and then being able to actually apply it. And I think that so many times, Jen, and we've talked about this in the past, is people can intellectualize their awareness. However, it doesn't, just because you understanding doesn't equal knowledge and implementation. So I had to get the knowledge, then get the understanding, and then get the implementation of that to be able to actually, you know, to process it myself, to be in a spot where I was like, oh, okay, I get it. Now I can actually do it.
All right. So I'm deconstructing what Karen just said there. Erica, get ready. So this is a 3-step process. Right? So first is awareness, having to be aware of in what ways does this strength help you and in what ways does it not help you. So the questions is what's working about this strength, what's not working about this strength. When you're in whatever it is that's your asset, what is it giving you? And then what is it taking from you at the same time? Right? So, and there's a lot of questions. I don't think people just wake up and realize these things. Karen, the next thing you said was understanding. So how is understanding different than awareness?
Well, I could know something, right?
Okay.
To just have the awareness of something, but it doesn't mean that I understand it. So I'm trying to think of a good example. I don't know, like even if you think about coaching, right? You have the awareness that there's coaching, there's this profession, there's this whole thing that we're all doing. And then I had the awareness of coaching because remember when I got into this whole coaching world, you know, the guy that told me about it, he's just like, yeah, you should be a coach. And my response was, does it look like I want to put a freaking whistle around my neck? And because that was my experience with coaching. So then having the awareness, hey, there is such a thing as business coaching or leadership coaching of all that, but I didn't understand it. So then I had to understand that to actually be able to do it. Does that make sense?
It does. So I'm going to take it back to our 3-step process. The first one being awareness, the second one being understanding. In your particular case, because I think yours is a great example, right? So being able to emotionally compartmentalize is, I think it's about really understanding what ways it's affecting you.
Yeah. And
right?
Because you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
And
exactly.
Right. So, and I like to use that example of like, so, you know, if you walk into a room that you've never been in before, right? You don't know. But when you come out of that room, you can't not know what that room looks like. You know, it's funny, Jen, even thinking about like our classes and our trainings, like we tell people it's an experience. Right? We tell people that it's different. But the thing is they don't know that until they're in it and then they're leaving. So when and the cool part about that is then when they're leaving, they're like, oh my God, you were right. This is different than anything I've ever experienced.
Right.
But they don't know what they don't know until they experience what we have.
All right, I'm going to break that down. So really the understanding part is understanding your relationship with the asset. So awareness is understanding, something's going on here and I'm leaving something on the table. The understanding part of it is, when does it show up? When do I go to overdrive? When am I balanced? Basically, and why, and not that we would ask why questions, but why the overdrive right now? Is that fair to say?
Yeah,
That's
totally.
truly understanding. Who are you in relationship to the asset? Okay. The third part that you said then is implementation. And that's really about choice, making a decision to play around with this asset concept. And what would be one small area that you could start to make a shift? Parents not going to, from an emotional standpoint, way back when, just be like, all right, I'm emotionally available for everybody. And I'm going to be experiencing all this amazing stuff. And I'm going to have no boundaries or anything. But there was with certain areas that you were able to let down the emotional guard, right, to let people out from outside of your immediately family in to test the waters, to see if you died, to see if it worked out, to see if you could handle, I'm just, what was happening with it, to give more ability to be able to consciously choose it. And I think that's part of it, is because if somebody said to me, you can never use your creativity again to come up with programs, that's not a world I want to live in. But there are certain times when it needs to be channeled in a different way, and testing out how that works. Can I still stay engaged if I'm not just coming up with the new program? That kind of thing.
Right.
Right? So that's a great example. So it's the awareness. It's about the understanding who your client is in relationship to their asset. And then what is the choice that they want to make around it? So for example, I'm thinking of Sarah's two gentlemen and doing the coding. They may, with each other, be able to loosen up a little bit or tighten up a little bit. Not all the way, but that might be a choice that they end up making to have the relationship be stronger or whatever. Or maybe the guy goes fast and furious and the other guy comes behind him with some of his more rigid stuff to have a really amazing product. Who really knows? But that's where it's about the choice of how to be able to switch that. All right, what's running through your guys' head? Questions, thoughts, comments?
I just hope that you're writing up all of these. Like now you have a little thing. You have like a nice 3-part process. Okay, I realize you're writing it right now, but then turning it into, it's a page in a book or it's something, like you've created something here.
That's
right. Make a Canva graphic. I don't know, just something. So it's like, you have it. You've created something.
No, that's true, right? So to be able to use it. But I think there's a series of questions that come with each of these steps to help people understand more for themselves. Like the perfectionism in your husband. I think that's so interesting. The understanding, the awareness was you need to do something about your perfectionism. The understanding was, holy crap, I just spent 3 hours looking for the perfect book.
He was totally happy with that. This is not...
Right. I know he doesn't want to change it. Everybody wants to change it on him.
He hadn't read the book yet. But the understanding component is really about, it seems like that's the perspective shift. That's like, when am I on default on this? When am I triggered into this? When do I engage it? How can I shift that to a conscious relationship with engagement, right?
Yes.
That's like understanding the landscape of this. Like you saw, okay, this is what it gives me and this is what it costs or whatever. There's that first awareness of like, this is what it looks like when it's flying full flags and this is what it looks like when it's not. But then the understanding is that's the coaching part, right? Of like.
Totally. Yep. Yeah.
And then if you think about it, guys, right then with the implementation and the choice, that's where the rubber kind of meets the road, because that's kind of the action. Then, okay,
that's
great.
Part 3.
Now that you understand this, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. That's really good. I know it's very fascinating. If you guys were to think about what your biggest asset is that can turn into an asset for you personally, what would it be?
Or just your biggest asset. Maybe you've never considered that it turns into an asset. Just what do you think of as your biggest asset?
Okay, yeah, let's do it that way. That's good. Because like I'll give an example is another example for me. One of my assets truly is around communication. But then sometimes I over explain things and overdo things and stuff. So you don't have to know if it's a downside, but that's a good point from Erica. So what do you think your biggest asset is? All right, Sarah.
I'm being very chatty today, aren't I?
I love it.
I would say it's probably caring too much about the work that I present. And this has been a constant, ongoing problem. So, for example, when I was in banking, I was in marketing, and I very much cared about the detail, about which pictures were used, how the content was presented, the user experience of the brochure, rather than just that'll do. And as a result, I became very much known for it. And people would say, oh, go and see Sarah, she's really good at PowerPoint, or she'll find you a nice photo for the brochure. You can imagine how that went. It was, I was the whole floor's PowerPoint secretary at one point. The bosses would say, oh, nobody does it like you do. So something that had initially made me stand out and that got me so far with having, beautifully presented work became a curse.
Yep, that's it. That's great. That's a good example. All right, Lisa, what about you?
Yeah, I can relate a lot to you, Jen, in terms of I am one that is often the one that will jump into the deep end, and I'll be like, I got this, and I jump in the deep end, and then I'm like, crap, somebody throw me a noodle really fast, and I will do that. So, I started a nonprofit, and it was awesome, and I got to a point where I was like, okay, wait, my skill sets are not what this nonprofit needs. So I think that is an awesome asset of mine, because I am willing to jump into the deep end. And I believe that somebody will finally throw me a noodle. And I know totally for a fact in my life that it has been definitely not the best thing to always do.
Yeah. So I call that saying yes and then figuring it out, right? So which is a
totally.
great asset, right?
Yes.
So if you just say yes, that gives you, and the great parts of that is you get more opportunities. You learn what you're capable of. You have new adventures and new, then this can go, with nonprofits, but it also could be then all of a sudden, next thing you know, you're going skydiving or something like, so yeah. It can really be both ends of the spectrum. So that's good.
Definitely.
That's good. All right, good. What about you, Andrea? I'm going to call on you. What do you think one of your assets is?
Definitely communication and thinking, and probably the downside of that is expecting that everyone around me should have the same standards in communication that I do, or the same abilities in communication that I do. And expecting that everyone would also, with that, accept my directness, as Karen alluded to before, things along that nature.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Erica, what about you? What's an asset for you?
I feel like we've been talking about this. I would say
would you agree with what Karen said?
Yeah, like creative thinking. I have so many strengths. I'd say the one that's gotten me in trouble.
Humility.
So I can think of so many. Give me some Post-it notes. No.
I'll color code them for you.
I will. I did read this hilarious article that I could post in the group that was like, the Myers-Briggs things, and it was like how all the different Myers-Briggs types will die. Like basically it's this thing, like if you take yours, and mine was like being lost in the, getting lost in the Amazon rainforest, because you went on an adventure without any like GPS because you thought it was fun. It would be fun. Like, that's how you'll die. And I'm like, I have literally done that. I almost died, like, okay.
That's funny.
So that's where that, like, kind of what the person, just like, I'll figure it out. It will be an adventure. Like, there is a limit to when that is a good idea. But it's a strength too, right? Like, anyway.
Totally.
Yeah. Up
Good.
for any adventure anywhere. Yes, that has, buying the plane tickets before I know what language they speak in that country.
That's great. Sarah wants to know if you're an ENFP. What are you?
That's exactly right. I will see you up a river somewhere without a paddle, but having a good attitude.
But have a good attitude about it.
Carving a paddle. That's right. We'll do it.
That's great. Hey, Heather, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Doing good. I am loving your photos of your daughter being at college.
I know it's fun, isn't it?
Yes, and I adore her. I just think she's a very, very cool kid, having met her in Toronto. And so anyway, it's very fun. And her presentation, like, anyway. So what do you think is one of your assets?
Are you asking me? I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. You're asking me?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, well I think probably oh boy, I see them often as not assets, but when I catch on to something quickly and I kind of paying attention to what's going on, I always think that I expect everyone else to get it as well, and or a sense of humor about situations, and I just kind of feel like everyone should be on the same page as I am, and that's very uncoach-like. So I guess that's an asset, but it's also a big liability, or what were you calling it? I was driving. I was in the car before, which is why I had to switch over to my laptop from my phone. Ache, is that what you call it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. So I have a lot of those.
That's interesting. That you just made me think of something, Heather. So one thing to ponder as we're wrapping up here, one thing to ponder is that does your asset come into coaching in any way that then becomes an asset, right? So I'm not saying Heather does this at all, but she just got me thinking of it. So she says when she catches on to things pretty quickly. She can maybe see how it comes together. She could maybe see the end results, and then she can get frustrated. So I'm not saying Heather does this, but an example of how that could come into coaching would be trying to fix your client's problem, trying to give them the answers, trying to sort of guide them or lead them in a certain way. So that would be interesting to see that connection.
Yeah, fortunately I'm not having that issue.
Okay, good. You're not having it.
No.
Okay, good.
Tempting as it can be at times, no. I mean, no, it doesn't get in the way. Just maybe in my personal life a little bit. Yeah, but.
I love it. Okay, good. Let's see if we can try the other Heather who's on here. She says she's trying to unmute herself, and I don't show you as muted. See if you can talk to us. My guess is no. Okay. All right. Well, anyway, fun stuff to discover. And the key thing is about working with your clients is for them to, a lot of times, great ways to ask it is, how do you think other people perceive it? Where do you think you're in overdrive? What is it that you're leaving on the table? Sometimes by always taking that approach, it depends on what their asset is. In what ways do you think this is strengthening the team? In what ways is it non-empowering to the team? So a lot of different ways that you want to ask both flip sides of the question. So what's it cost you and what's the benefit? You know, where does it help? Where does it hurt? Where does it empower? Where does it disempower? Where does it move you forward? Where does it hold you back? So being able to ask those both questions to have identify, especially in the understanding of our 3-step process, the second step, that's really going to be important for people to decide also when it's needed and when it's not. Sometimes we do want our activities to go into overdrive. Sometimes we just want them to be used as a strength. So, all right, Karen, that was fun. That was your topic. You picked it, right?
It was after my creativity of running, Jen.
That's right. That it was after that. And I am proud to say that Karen's asset balance around emotion is night and day different from years ago, right?
Yes, honey.
Remember when you cried at the airport the first time?
I used to cry at the airport all the time. Now we don't go anywhere separate.
I know, but that was a big moment. We'd be leaving each other, and then you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm a person who now fucking cries at the airport. And I'm like, congratulations. I'll see you in a few days. Right? You come a long way, baby.
Absolutely, honey. It's been an amazing ride.
All right. So on that note, we will see you guys in the Facebook group or wherever it is that we see you. And hopefully we'll see you in Morristown, New Jersey on November 9th if you can do the Coachapalooza.
Oh,
all right. On that note,
it'll be fun.
What?
I said, you guys should come if you can. It's going to be a blast.
It will. Eric, are you there?
Yeah,
I do know that.
Everyone come so we can meet each other.
That's right. That'll be good. All right. On that note, you guys have a great weekend. We are going to Lake Tahoe tomorrow, where they're having a week of amazingly disturbing weather, where it is going to snow tomorrow, and the high on one of the days is going to be 40. It's a freak thing. Only the week we're there. So we'll be happy to send pictures. All right. That's it. Bye.
Bye, guys.